Durban is a hive of activity this weekend as the Moses Mabhida Stadium hosts a government-led certificate of recognition handover to AmaZulu King. President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa expected to hand over the certificate to His Majesty King Misizulu Lethiwe. The event happens at a time when the issue of security is in the spotlight, with a terror alert having been issued by the U.S. Embassy a few days ago, and the ongoing tension within AmaZulu royal family. But Police Minister Bheki has assured those who are planning to attend the event that safety will be the order of the day. Now, Lethiwe Mdluli has also been tracking this story for us. She's joining us now live from eNCA in Durban. She's been up and about looking at some important heritage sites and their meaning, significance and links with AmaZulu Royal House. Good afternoon, Lethiwe. So tomorrow is a big day, but today, as the preparations are underway, you've been visiting some very interesting heritage sites in and around eThekwini. Where are you now, and what's the significance of the place you are visiting currently?
Well, Braden, it's a very, very big day tomorrow. We're expecting about 48,000 people to be a part of this big ceremony that's taking place at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. We do understand that King Misizulu Lethiwe will be receiving that much important certificate from the President. And today we've been visiting various heritage sites across Durban, where we've been learning about the history of the AmaZulu Royal House and also the links that they have in Durban. We first started at the Kwamuhle Museum, where we learned about the history of the Royal House and also where everything took place during the apartheid days. We also then went to Queen Thokozile Zulu gravesite in Ketomena, where we got to learn about her remains being moved from Mkumbane, and that is the last place that she was known to have lived in. And she was then transported, or her remains were then transported, and she was buried at Ketomena. So we went to the museum there and we got to learn about the history behind that. But right now we are at the eNCA Heritage Site, where we are learning more about the founder of the ANC, John Langalibalele Dube. And I just want to step out of shot and show you this museum right now at the Ohlange Institute. We do know that John Langalibalele Dube was a very important figure in South African politics, but also he wrote biographies for the Royal House and the Royal Zulu House. So he was an important figure for the Royal House. We also do know that he was an advisor for King Dinizulu. He was very close also to the AmaZulu Prime Minister Mangosuthu Buthelezi. So right now what you're seeing on your screens is the first house owned by John Langalibalele Dube. We have been learning more about him and where he or how he was involved and the relations between him and the royal family. This is of course ahead of the ceremony is that he wrote biographies and the Zulu monarch. So right now, Braden, we will be moving also to King Shaka, where we will be learning more about him and how he came about and how he contributed to the Zulu history here in KwaZulu-Natal. But we have been learning more and more about the history in Durban. We also learned about Mkumbane, where a lot of different races before the apartheid era actually resided. And before the Group Areas Act, we learned that people used to live in harmony. We also visited the first house that King Zwelithini owned in KwaMashu. This is all forming part of the history of the Zulu House and where we are heading, because tomorrow we will be seeing King Misizulu Lethiwe receiving that certificate from President Cyril Ramaphosa.
A very interesting link. There very few of us would know that John Langalibalele Dube used to record the history there and write for the AmaZulu Royal House, and that he was an advisor to King Dinizulu. That was at the turn of the century and in the early 1900s.
And right now, what you're seeing on your screens is the first newspaper that John Langalibalele owned here in KwaZulu-Natal. It's called Ilanga newspaper. As you know, he was a very educated individual, and he believed in South Africans receiving and getting that much needed education so they can move up in life. Of course, he was also a philosopher, a politician, and also a publisher. So these are some of the work that John Dube left behind and the significance. As you can see, he wrote the first novel in Misizulu, and these are some of the work that or some of his work that is displayed in this museum. We have been told about the writings that he shared, and he is the only person who started writing biographies for the Zulu royal house, and he wrote them in Misizulu. That is the significance between John Langalibalele Dube and also the royal house. Of course, I mentioned before that he was also an advisor and a close friend to King Dinizulu, and we do know that he also had close relations to the Zulu Prime Minister Mangosuthu Buthelezi. So these are some of the histories that are kept here in Durban. And like I said, we also visited KwaMuhle Museum, where we learned about the history behind the townships here in Durban, Umlazi Township, KwaMashu Township, and also Chatsworth. I also did mention that in KwaMashu, we also visited the house of the late King Zwelithini, where he used to stay when he was in Durban. We went to that house. We found people who are getting ready for the event tomorrow. We do understand that a lot of people that are coming from outside of Durban will be visiting these heritage sites, and that's the reason why I'm showing our or where they can go if they want to learn more about the history of the Zulu monarch, and also just to learn more about the city of Durban, because this is where the ceremony is going to be taking place tomorrow at Mabhida Stadium.
Thank you for the tour, Lethiwe Mdluli there in Nanda, in the John Langalibalele Dube Center. The very fascinating links with the writer, with the AmaZulu Royal House. Now, Police Minister Bheki Cele has instructed police officers to vigorously enforce the law during Saturday's handover ceremony.
There should be no confusion. Tomorrow, there is no coronation of the king. It's handing over of certificate, because that has been done. Yours is to make sure that all happens peacefully, as Commissioner or as General Stapane has pronounced and has announced, has put online what is our job. General Stapane, you left just one point, one portion on the elaboration of the Constitution. You said we must uphold the law. The portion you left is that and enforce it. That's the portion you left. We uphold the law and enforce it. Tomorrow, starting from yesterday, today, tomorrow, and after, your job is to enforce the law. Anything, anybody that gets out of the way, you must make sure that you put that person back on space, so that tomorrow and thereafter, the situation and the event is given the dignity that it deserves.
Well, the last time AmaZulu Nation saw the coronation of a king was 51 years ago. A 21-year-old prince at the time, Gudul Zwelithini Bheki Zulu, was installed as the 8th monarch. Age 48 now, King Misizulu Zwelithini will be taking over the throne as the 9th king. On Saturday, Moses Mabhida Stadium, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, will hand over a certificate of recognition to His Majesty. Mvana takes you back to 1971 when his father was installed. That's Misizulu's father was installed during the apartheid era government.
History is about to be made at the majestic Moses Mabhida Stadium this Saturday. A crowd of over 40,000 people will be witnessing the state coronation of His Majesty King Misizulu Zwelithini, following the passing of his father, King Goodwill Zwelithini Zulu, in March 2021. In August, he entered the kraal, where in essence, Ubayeda was seeking blessings and protection from previous kings and ancestors, while also announcing his arrival to the throne. Let's take you back to the 3rd of December. This is when AmaZulu monarch was coronated. Historians say there was a crowd of around 20,000 people gathered at KwaKhethomthanda Royal Palace, KwaNongoma, to witness this historic moment. The then 21-year-old prince had taken over the reins from his father, Isilo Cyprian Zulu Unyangayizizwe Solomon, who had passed away in September 1968. His uncle, Prince Mqwayizeni, had occupied the throne as regent. Bear in mind that it wouldn't be until 1976 that television was introduced to South Africa. Consequently, a significant portion of the population was unable to see this almost once-in-a-lifetime event. As you can imagine, newspapers and radio were the only source of information. To give you an idea of what was happening on that day, it was raining, and in African culture, rain usually symbolizes blessings. The event was meant to start at 10 a.m. but got delayed. The crowd waited in great anticipation for the king to arrive, with amabutho making way for his arrival through Zulu hymns and stick fighting. Ingonyama arrived clad in a navy blue uniform with leopard skin trimmings, accompanied by his first wife, then Princess Sibongile Madlamini. King Goodwill Zwelithini had just turned 21 before his coronation and was a newlywed. At the same time, it hadn't been long since he returned from exile. He had fled KwaZulu-Natal because of assassination threats when it emerged that he would be his father's successor. Back in 1971, King Zwelithini's installation was administered by then Minister of Bantu Administration and Development, MC Botha. Fast forward to a democratic South Africa. These historians unpack the significance of the certificates which President Cyril Ramaphosa will be handing over to King Misizulu Zwelithini. What power does the certificates which President Cyril Ramaphosa will be handing over to King Misizulu, what sort of power will it hold?
It's a very, very powerful, it is, because it is legally, it can be bounded, it cannot be removed unconstitutionally. It protects him, from any, things that is legitimately recognized, and anybody who does has got to go again to court and lose.
The traditional leg of the coronation was completed at KwaKhangela Mankengane, and this time it is a government event, because you know that when a king is nominated, there are processes that are followed through the provincial government, through to COGTA, and then the state president will endorse the decision. So it is the government occasion, but it is also equally significant for the Zulu people for the affirmation of the throne.
Prince uMangosuthu Buthelezi was also at the 1971 coronation with amabutho. He was there in his capacity as both Prime Minister and Chief Executive Officer of the KwaZulu Territorial Authority. It would be difficult to overlook his contribution, given that he served as AmaZulu Prime Minister to 3 kings. Contestation of the throne has constantly repeated itself from the days of King Shaka Kasenzangakhona, who was assassinated by his brother King Dingane Kasenzangakhona. It's now on the doorstep of King Misizulu, as we've witnessed raging court battles and factions.
Human beings are unpredictable, and you cannot guarantee what will happen next. But in cases such as this, there is always a succession debacle between the royal family members. So it's something that you can never prevent it from happening, because some of these things occur within the family, the ruling family, the relative, the close relative. So it's a feud that sits in the royal family themselves, and it's about them coming down, sitting down and reconciling.
King Misizulu serves as a custodian of AmaZulu culture, and he's dedicated himself to helping deal with social issues that his father committed himself to fighting. At the moment, he's involved in projects advocating for development in rural areas and the end of gender-based violence.
Ngizimisele njengengonyama kaZulu ukuhola isizwe sikaMageba, isizwe sikababa.
Johannesburg.